Welcome to part 6 of the Dharma Yoga website series. So this is the second of 2 videos that are on the full width styles for our CSS. So in the last video we styled the header including the logo, callout section on the right, the navigation, and the image slider. Actually the navigation was already styled. But you should have everything down to this point styled, so we can get started on the 3-column section here, then the 2-column, the next 3-column, and then we'll conclude this video with the footer after the little callout section with the button above it. Okay, so make sure that you have the index.html file open in your web browser so we can see the updates to what we're styling. And then open up your style.css file so we can get started with the sections of the website. So let's start with the 1/3 section class. So let's just reference that class with a period, and we'll start styling the sections. So write period 1-3rd, open and close swirly brackets, and we're going to give each 1/3 section its own width here that will be a percentage of the page. So we want to make sure that there's room for margin and padding on either side, actually just margin. So let's give it a width of 28%. So next drop down and we'll tell it to float left, and let's give it a margin of 2% top, 0 right, 3% bottom, and 4% left. Okay, and if you refresh, this is going to make a big change to the website. So now we have all these 1/3 sections starting to align themselves. Okay, so next let's go up top here and get started inside of the first 1/3 section. So we'll want to just text align center. That centers the icons here. And the icons down below. And then we'll start styling the icons in the first 1/3 section. These right here. So you just want to reference the 1/3 and then the I class. So we'll write dot 1/3, dot 1-3rd I, open and close, and then we'll give them an orange color of pound F0 A830. And let's give that a font size of, this is going to be, so we want to have it nearly 6 times the size of what it appears there. So let's give it a font size of 585%. And then if we refresh, we'll have the icons looking nice and sharp with this orange color and the 585% size, so it matches the original down to that heading. Okay, so if we go back over, let's go ahead and style the clear fix here before we move down to the heading and 2-column section. So we just want to write dot for class clearfix, and then it's very simple. We're just going to tell it to clear both. So that's going to make it so nothing aligns on either side, and all of the elements will appear just as we want them to. So you'll notice that this that the icons below match up top. Later in the CSS we're going to give them a particular style and size. So next, let's drop down and just style that heading 2 tag here with the class of welcome. So we'll just give that a little bit of margin to create some separation from the 3-column sections above it. So you just want to write h2 dot welcome for the welcome class, and let's give that a margin top of 4%. So now if we refresh, it's going to create some space up here, a little bit of white space for us, and it's matching up pretty nicely with the original. Next, let's drop down and style the left column class. So section class left column, which will include these 2 paragraphs and the heading 1 tag below. So write dot left dash col for left column, and let's give that a width of 60%. Okay, so if you refresh, it's lining up pretty nicely. We're just going to give it some margin and tell it to float left. So you want to write float left, and then let's drop down and give it margin on every side but the right. So write 4% top, 0 right, 4% bottom, and 4% left. And then if we refresh, we'll have some space here created. Okay, so next let's style the sidebar section that this image is going to sit in. So the sidebar is right here, which is a class, so we'll want to use a period to reference it. So write dot sidebar, and we'll give that a width of 26%. So we'll leave some room for the margin, and then we'll tell that to float left, and let's give it, we're going to give it a margin of 4% all around. So here is the margin in the original. So write margin 4% top, 4% left right, or 4% top bottom, 4% left right, or we could just write 4%. Okay, now let's style that image. So you want to reference the sidebar class and then write image, and we'll give it an opacity of 0.7 or 70%. That also means 70%. So now this is going to create a little bit of a fade effect when we refresh. So that's going to, I think there's too much attention drawn to the picture without this, but now it kind of evens things out with a little bit of opacity, lightening up the picture. Okay, so next let's drop down to the images that are in the 1/3 sections below. So you can just play around with the opacity if you want to find out what type of look you're going for. So drop down and let's style these images down here. So we'll create a little bit of padding around them. So we'll reference them with 1/3 and image. So class 1/3 img, and let's give them padding 2% top, 0 right, 6% bottom, and 0 left. And then if we refresh, that's going to create some space here for the top and bottom. Okay, so next we can drop down to the callout section with the button and the text telling us to check out the classes page. So let's start with the page callout class that everything in here is nested in, and we'll be adding the border to the orange border. So let's write dot page callout, since this is a class here. So dot page dash callout, open and close, and let's give that a width of 90% of the screen, or of the wrapper really. And then let's give that a minimum height of 70 pixels. Okay, and then drop down and give that a margin of 1% top bottom, auto left right. So now it's starting to center itself on the page. But next we'll want to give the text some style itself. So for that orange border, write border 1 pixel solid for a solid line, and then have the orange hex value here, which is the EFA831 that matches the orange up top. So when you refresh, here's the orange border, looking very similar to the original. So now let's style the text. So if you remember, we have the div class called callout text here for the paragraph. So we can just reference that with callout dash text. And we'll tell it to float left, and we'll give that a width to take up a portion of the page, and then we'll give some width to the button on the right. So let's give it a width of 75%. So that's going to push the R classes text off to the side, and then let's give the text a font size to make it larger. We'll give it a font size of 22 pixels, and then we'll give it a font weight of bold. So refresh, and here is the larger font. And now to make it bold, just write font weight bold. Okay, So now we can drop down and add the button holder class that will be off to the right and contain the button here for our classes, the our classes link. So let's go ahead and remind ourselves where the button holder class is. Okay, so drop down in the HTML and you'll see the button holder class here that will contain the button. So just write dot button holder, button dash holder, and then we'll tell that to float right rather than left. And we want to give it a width of 19%. So that's going to leave some room for the padding that we'll add too. So now the our classes link is off to the center here, and let's give it a padding, some padding of 1% all around. And let's give it a margin bottom of 4%. So this we'll see the effects of this more when we style the button, which is what we're going to do next. So it's not going to really make a difference right now. Okay, so now let's go over and let's style the button class here, which is just btn. So you want to write .btn. And then we'll tell the button itself to float left within the button holder container. And now let's give it some border radius. So we don't really need, I'll tell you what these styles are. So we're going to give it a border radius. This WebKit border radius was for Safari. We don't really need it anymore because all web browsers really recognize modern CSS3, but this was for Safari, and then for border radius for Firefox, it was Moz border radius. And the border radius tag, which is a CSS3 tag, is just plain border radius, and then you want to add the pixel. So next, let's give it a color of that orange color, the lighter of the orange color. So that will show up once we give it the size. So drop down and let's give it the font size of 22 pixels. Whoops. And then refresh. And then here is the our classes button. Okay, so now let's give it some padding. Or background rather. And let's give it the background color of EFA831. So if you refresh, now it's starting to take some appearance here. And we're going to give the text some padding to make the background larger. So let's give it some padding of 10 pixels top, 20 pixels right, 10 pixels bottom, and 20 pixels left. So refresh, and then here we have the actual size for the button. Okay, but I forgot to add the pixels for the border radius. So you just want to make sure that you have 8 pixels. And then refresh. And now we'll have some border radius here with the rounded edges. Okay, so now let's give the font a weight, and we're going to give it a font weight of bold, and then we're going to take away the underline by giving it a text decoration of none. So go ahead and refresh, and now we have it looking just like the original here, but without the hover effect for the darker orange color that we'll add next. So drop down and write the same class .btn:hover, and let's give it a background color with the darker of the orange colors. So that's £F07818, and then refresh, and we'll have the hover effect. Okay, so drop down once again and give it a text decoration of none. Okay, so now we're looking just like the original here. So that concludes the main styling areas. The next thing that we'll do is drop down to the footer. So for the footer, we're just using the regular HTML5 footer tag. So all you need to write is footer. But first I'll just make a little comment saying start footer. Okay, so here is the HTML5 footer tag. So just write footer, and then we're going to give that footer its background, which is the same as the navigation. So that's £FCEBB6. And refresh. And we haven't given it its width yet, so it's not going to show up. I'm also going to give the footer some opacity so everything kind of blends in and is a little lighter. So I'm going to give it an opacity of 0.9, and let's give it the width of 100% of the wrapper. So refresh, and we need to add overflow. That's right. So first add the padding of one pixel top bottom, 0 left right, and now give it its color of 5E412F. So that's the color for all of the text here. That's the brown color. And I forgot the overflow tag, so that's what we need to add. So just write overflow auto, and then refresh, and here we have all of the background taken care of for the footer. And later we'll take care of those gigantic icons. Okay, so let's get started with these H3 tags up top, and we want to give them some underline. So just write footer H3 for heading 3, open and close, and let's give that a text decoration of underline. So text decoration underline. And next we can drop down and we'll give the contact info here under that H3 some style. So we'll just tell all of that to center on inside of the 1/3 section that it sits. So all of this info here, the footer contact tag. So just the paragraph tag here. So write dot footer contact, and we'll tell it to text align center. Okay, and refresh, and now here we have the text in the contact us area lining up nice and centered. So let's just take care of that phone number. As I explained earlier, just like the one up top, when it's on a mobile device, it's going to show up as a link, the blue link with the underlined text if we don't take care of it. So we just want to keep the color the same as that brown color and take away the underline. So go ahead and reference that phone number with the phone class that we made in the HTML. So phone class A for the link that it shows up as on the phone, and write color 5E, so that's pound 5E412F for the brown text color that we've been using. And then drop down and give it the text decoration of none to take away the underline. Okay, so next, this is where the fun begins. This is my favorite part. It's these links. There's something special about social media links here. So we're going to first take away the list style type, and then we'll give them some margin and resize them. So we want to start with our unordered list class here, the dot social class, and we'll tell that to have a list style type. So list style type, and that will be none. So this will take away the little bullet points on the left that show up inherently with list items. So refresh, and then the list item bullet points will disappear. And now let's just give them some margin to separate them some. So we'll just give them a margin of 3% top bottom and 0. So that's for the whole footer section, not for the individual icons that we're styling for the unordered list here. So go ahead and refresh, and there will be a little bit of space separating the unordered list from the text above. And now give it a padding of 0, and then we can move on to the list items. So you just want to write dot social for the class, and then reference the list item below. So dot social li for list item, open and close, and then we'll just give that, or we'll tell it to text align, or I'm sorry, we'll tell it to display in line next to one another. So just write display in line, and then you can refresh, and we have at least 3 of them showing up on one line in the 1/3 section here. So drop down, and now we'll change the size and the color. So we're going to be using the I believe it's the darker orange color. So select color F07818, and then we'll give it a font size of 195% of the original icon size. So refresh. As you remember, this is like 585%. So these are 195%. And refresh, and here we have them. Now we want to give them some padding on either side of each other. So we'll give them padding of 3% all around. And now it's looking very good. We just need to add the hover style. So when we hover over them, it's going to have that turquoise style, the same as the H1 tags. So write .social for the social class, and then I:hover, open and close, and write color, and that turquoise color is #78C, so 78C0A8. And refresh, and we're going to see this same color here when we hover. So there it is. Next we can move on to the Google Map, and that's actually going to be the Google Map class, Google Maps class, and then the iframe HTML tag will be the last of the main CSS styles for the full width website before we move on to the media queries. So we just want to write .google-maps, and we're going to give it a really specific styling here that's for Google Maps and YouTube videos too, with an iframe to make it so it's responsive. So position relative, padding bottom 75%, height 0, and overflow hidden. So this you always want to use for iframes, well, Google Maps and YouTube videos, if you're making them with a responsive website for them to look correctly. And then we'll style the iframe. So just reference the Google Maps class and then write iframe, and we'll make it so it appears 100% of the 1/3 class that it sits in. So give it a position of absolute, top 0, left 0, and then a width and height of 100% important. So we want to tell it to, using the important note, to override any other width for it. So width 100% important, and then height 100% important. And that concludes the HTML for the full width version of the website. So if we refresh, we have the map taking up 100% of that 1/3 column. So now we shouldn't be able to distinguish our version from the original with the full width, but we still need to work on the mobile version. So in the next video, we're going to go over all of the media queries and wrap up the tutorial to give it the awesome mobile feel, and I will see you there in the next video.